At Landmark Church, we believe in the power of a story. Not just any story, but God's story, in and through us. Psalm 107:2 declares, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from the hand of the enemy." When God moves in someone's life, that testimony isn't just for them. It's a microphone for evangelism. It's a tool for ministry. It's a city on a hill.
Your testimonies can be the bridge that brings someone to Christ because stories evangelize. When we hear what God has done for others, our own faith grows because stories strengthen faith.
And stories also defeat darkness. Revelation 12:11 says, they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony.
A landmark is a fixed point of reference, something that stands out, guides, and tells a story. Just like physical landmarks help people navigate their journey, your story can help someone else find their way. Landmark Stories is a place where real people share their real story. Unfiltered moments from the imperfections of their past to how God transformed them into who they are today.
Throughout Scripture, God's people was commanded to do his works. This space was made to allow God's people to do just that and to invite you to encounter the one who saves.
This is more than an event. This is about creating culture, to boldly proclaim what God has done with the stories he has written in and through us. Your story could be the landmark that leads someone else to Jesus.
So, what's your landmark? Because your story isn't just about your past. It's about God's power in the present. Please welcome to the stage, Little John Paladino.
Oh my goodness. How's everybody doing tonight? Good. I just want to say thanks to Matt the Ice Pick for everything he did for me while I was away. I appreciate you, buddy. So, I'm glad to see everybody came out tonight. This is a great turnout. From my understanding, you don't get this on a Wednesday. I'm just saying. So, my name is John Paladino. I was better known as Little John in the circles I traveled in throughout my illustrious criminal history when I was young, and I made all of these youthful indiscretions. Like us all, I came from a nice household, a mom and a dad, working class family, grew up with a pool in the yard, a dog, and everything was the white picket fence and such. But I recognized when I was young that I had something a little bit more different inside of me where I was not so fearful of doing bad things. So when I was young, I can remember the first time I ever took something. My mom used to own a ceramic studio, and we used to go to get supplies for her. And I would run through the aisles and be mischievous and break little things. And one day I came across the office, and I went into the office and I started rifling through the drawers. I couldn't have been more than like 10 years old. And I found an envelope with money. And it was like at that moment that I made a decision, and I took that envelope. And I think back about that all the time in my life where I'm like, man, what the heck would have made you do that? And back then, not to show my age, but we didn't need money in the 70s. When I was coming up, we went outside, we rode our bikes. We didn't have a lot of video games and the stuff that the kids have today. But I took it nonetheless, went home, rode my bike around. At night, took a shower. My mom would come in and collect the clothes. And she found the money. And she was like, where'd this come from? And I started stammering, oh no, I found it, this and that. She's like, look, man, you better tell the truth, or I'm gonna tell your father. So I started coughing up the truth immediately. And then sure enough, my mom, she sort of covered for me. She's like, look, this is what we're gonna do. We're taking that money tomorrow, we're going to church, and you're gonna put it in the poor box. And then you better never do nothing like that ever again. And for the most part, I listened, and I was, a good kid, grew up pretty good. But at one point, my parents were getting divorced, and I think that may have been the catalyst that sent me in a different direction. Maybe I was acting out, I'm not sure how to describe it, but I started getting into little troubles as a teenager. I'd be hanging out with my friends, we'd be drinking, smoking pot. Being with my mom in a single family, single parent home, we didn't have a lot. My mom, I can remember, used to give me and my sister $2 every day, and she'd be like, make that work. And she would leave food on the stove. So I'd go to school, come back, and at nighttime, I lived in Belmar, New Jersey at the time. I would go hang out by the beach, and all the bars would be emptying out like late at night, and I would be sitting and waiting for like the drunk people to come out. And then I would mug them and take their money, whatever they had left on them. And then from there, I progressed into several other youthful indiscretions, let's call them. And I found myself in prison. I was out with a friend one night, somebody got stabbed, and unfortunately, that person, like a week later, who stabbed the guy, he wound up dying. He got killed in Staten Island. And I took the blame for it. Like, I never told on him. I felt like guilty that he had passed away. And I went away for like 5 years. And when I came home, I was in a halfway house in Newark. And I met a guy. I'm not going to mention his name, but he was a pretty famous, wise guy from a Genovese crime family. And back then, I sort of knew a little bit about that because my own grandfather was involved with a family, Lucchese's, and he had spent some time in prison, but like any family, you don't want what you do for your children. You want better for them, So when this guy met me, he saw potential in me, but he saw the wrong potential. He saw like what I could be in that life. And he took me under his wing and he groomed me, and I wound up being a collector and a bodyguard for him at one point. But I used to try to bolster my resume of bad stuff just so I had a reputation that would precede me. I always felt like if somebody feared you, it would be less likely you'd have to have any type of confrontation with them because they would be thinking twice about that. So anytime I did get into a confrontation, I made it a point to sort of go over the top with things. We'll just keep it at that. One of the reasons Matt, when I got the phone call from Matt to come down here and then from his mom, my boss, is she in here? Oh my God, I've never been under so much pressure from getting the phone calls from her all week. You know what to say? You know what you're gonna say? I said, yeah, I know what I'm gonna say. It was me, I lived it. But she was on me all week, and I love her to death, but that's the boss right there. And then we're in the back getting mic'd up. We're at a hotel. I'm like, wow, man, I feel like I'm in the witness protection program. But anyway, not to get sidetracked. So I started off on this criminal enterprise. And what's important is this. In those moments in my life, that's really what I wanted. Like, I embraced that to the point where I lived that like every single day. I wanted to be a criminal. I wanted to be the best criminal I could be. And I wanted people to fear me so that I didn't really have any problems when I was out in the streets or such like that. I don't know if any of you guys have seen any of the stuff that we've done before, like with the talks and the podcasts and stuff, but like today we did a podcast and Matt was mentioning, one of my little tactics, because sometimes you just can't be physical with people. That doesn't work. So sometimes you have to be psychological. So I would always go and show up at people's houses like right before they would go to work in the morning. And I'd be standing right in front of their house when they came out, and they'd be shocked, like, oh my God. And I'd be like, hey, what's up, man? Got that money? No, but I got that. As soon as they made their excuses, boom, hit them in the face with a cup of gasoline. So I don't know if you've ever gotten gas thrown in your face, but from what I understand, it's not a good feeling. Gas in the eyes, up your nose, in your mouth. And then I would just simply tell them, I'll be back tomorrow with the matches. So it wouldn't take long. I'd get to about lunchtime before people would start calling me up saying, hey man, I got that money for you now, right now, today. So all these little things that I would employ in my tactics of doing the things I did, they didn't do anything for me other than land me in prison again. And once I got to prison the second time, I was already doing a bid for a pistol and some other stuff, and I was doing a 10-year bid in Rawway. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Rawway, the big dome over there. And while I was there, you know, my main ambition always was, once again, to be the best criminal I could be. So I was under the impression that when I was there, all I wanted to do was learn about other crimes, how to commit crimes, how to be better at it. And, you know, what I noticed when I'd be in jail was a lot of people come to jail, and as soon as they get there, now all of a sudden they find God. And I used to look at that as like almost a weakness, where I'd be like, look at these guys, man. Coming into prison, now you're at your like the bottom of the barrel, and now you want to find God? Like, he was on the street with you. Hey, you know, he's not just here, he was over there too. Why didn't you find him when you were on the street? And not that I like picked on anybody or messed with anybody who was into that, but I would be into stuff like debating them. So I read about every religion, so I would know how to debate somebody and argue with them about what they believed in. Because you have to imagine, it's hard in prison sometimes where you see guys, they're professing to be something, but then they don't live it. So you can go to church on Sunday, but then what are you doing when you come back after you're done with church? So you see a lot of guys that contradict what it is that they're doing. So I would always think like, you know, you're just doing that to be part of that crew so nobody messes with you, and you're over here like, oh, I'm religious, like leave me alone. But meanwhile, you'd see them doing bad stuff after church, so I had no respect for that. Then after I came home from prison on that bid, I was home for a while doing things, you know, go right straight back into my criminal activities. And then what happened was I got in trouble and had to go back to prison again. And when I went back this time, I naturally didn't want to be there, but I had a 7 flat. So they didn't know what to do with me. See, in the system, I had a reputation of being like real bad. I used to get in a lot of trouble, fighting with the police, you know, just bad stuff. And what I would do is, I go back to the county jail. I got arrested for some charges that were going to give me 10 years in prison. Well, really, it was a 400-year indictment. I copped out to 10 years. And what happened was, when I got to you go to the county jail, and then from the county jail, you get processed because you're going to prison. So they send you to a place in Trenton called Craft. When you get to Craft, it's a processing center for inmates. So you get there, and then they figure out where they're going to send you. So when I got to Craft, I was asking to go back to Rawway. I'm like, let me go back to my home where I was. I spent, you know, years and years there. And they refused. They said, no, you can't go back there because we only taking guys with 10 years or more. So I was like, how about Northern State? So I could be home up by Newark, be close to home. I said, no beds. They said, but how about this? How about we send you to Mid-State? And I was like, what, Mid-State? No way. Everybody in the system knew that Mid-State was the prison where they sent like all guys that were rats, pedophiles, just high-profile cases. And for me, I'm a convict. I didn't want to be around any of those people. So I'm like asking them to like, please send me somewhere else. And now you have to imagine, unfortunately, I grew up in the system. So a lot of guards and people that work in the system, they grew up with me also in the system. So some of the people that were on that board knew me, and they're sitting there with my jacket, and my jacket's like 2 times the size of this Bible with just all infractions that I've done over the years. And they're like telling me, like, look, John, we don't know what to do with you or where to send you, but how about Midstate? And then I had my reaction, and I was like, nah, I don't think so. And they asked me, they said, man, listen, you don't think that you just can't be good for 2 years? You're gonna be leaving anyway. I said, all right, you know what, I'll give it a shot. So they send me over to Midstate. As soon as I get off the bus at Midstate, because they know who's coming, they process everybody and the cops pull me on the side. And once again, it's a few officers that knew me. They're like, John, man, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm asking myself the same question. They're like, you think you could be here? And I'm like, I think I can make it, yeah. But they're asking in reference to, am I gonna hurt anybody? Because I don't wanna be around these type of people. So I said, listen, I think I could do it. So sure enough, I go, get into the Midstate prison. And at the time, unbeknownst to me, Matt had his own separate issues going on. And he'll explain those more in detail than I can, but he was downstairs where all, the soft people are, let's just put it that way. He didn't get his name ice picked till he met me, trust me. Then they moved him upstairs. So downstairs was like, just imagine, there's cops down there that have done crooked stuff, there's lawyers, there's judges, there's Jason Williams, there's Matt Mayer. It was just like a very calm atmosphere on the first floor. Now the second floor was like a retirement home for convicts like myself. So when I make it upstairs and go on to the unit, it's right away, people know me, they recognize me, oh man, Little John, blah, blah, blah. They start bringing stuff, here's some soups, cosmetics, get yourself, straightened out. So I do my thing, I throw my bag on the bed, and that's very important. I want you all to remember this if you ever find yourself in prison. Do a walkthrough. Walk up and down the tier and take a look at everybody that's there. Then go to your area. So I do that, I go sit down, and I look over and I see Matt. And I'm like, yo, how you doing? He's like, good, how you doing? I'm like, first question out of my mouth is, what are you here for? And then he told me, and I was like, all right, well, you're good over here with me, so we're good. So then Matt and I started having pleasantries every day, talking. And the one thing I noticed was not only Matt's like calmness, but his willingness to want to like help all the people on the unit, help guys around the prison. He would talk to people every day. And I just noticed him wanting to be there for guys that were confused, conflicted, and maybe didn't have peace in their hearts, because the one thing you noticed from this guy is he had peace in his heart. He's in the prison system, but he's peaceful. He's not on edge. He's just doing his thing, minding his business, always with a smile, always with a yes, no, thank you, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. And that's like unheard of or unseen, So I'm watching Matt, and I notice some things about him, and at first I'm thinking, this guy, man, he might be a little soft, I don't know. Then later on I find out he comes from a family, got 3 brothers, knock-around dude, did his thing, professional soccer player. So we became close friends very quickly. And, Matt started wanting to do like a little Bible study. So out of my friendship for him, I wanted to contribute, to show solidarity and support. Say, bro, I'll come and sit in with you just so you have people in the little group, so that everything goes according to plan. Hey, there he is, talking about Matt.
Not so fast, bro.
Not so fast.
Your impression about me It might be accurate,
Okay.
but I want to make sure they don't leave without the wrong impression about you.
Okay.
Because when you got moved on, your bed, which number was?
21.
And I was in 19, and we were 3 feet away from each other.
Like almost literally like this close.
I feel comfortable. See, I was downstairs with Jason Williams. A guard didn't really like the way we moved, so they chose me to get moved from 2 East to 7 East, which was the worst unit upstairs. So I moved my stuff upstairs. And I'll never forget it. I walk onto this housing unit that mirrored the downstairs. Same setup, 38 men, like sardines packed into a can. I find my bed. Day number 1, lights come on at 6 a.m. And I am awakened to a fight on my bed. Guys going at it. One guy was a gang member. His boys joined in. They lumped this guy up so bad. He was my neighbor. Cops run down. Long story short, they, of course, take all the people involved out in handcuffs. That leaves the bed vacant. 12 hours would not go by without the bed being filled. The system was jam-packed. That's why they wouldn't send him to other locations. Monday morning comes around, the bed is open. I ask, what's up with the bed? We don't know. Day number 2, bed stays open. Why are they not moving anyone in? Nobody had answers. Day number 3, I'm at the front table studying and reading, and in walks this joker. Now, it's true, he did walk down the housing unit, but what he did next was confusing to me.
Thank you. Come on, what am I gonna juggle now?
See, it's true that John walked down the end of the housing unit. What you got to understand about the culture is, and it's very strange, whoever runs the TV runs the housing unit. It'd be a gang member who's controlling what channels they watch, and if anyone touches the TV, you better believe him and his boys are going to let them know nobody's touching the TV. A lot of fights would break out. Our saying was, the TV never lost a fight. Don't touch the TV. Well, one day these guys are watching their TV, and they're standing around it, and that's when John moved on. I turn around to see what he's going to do, because I'm assuming he's going to go into our area. He throws his bag into the area. He walks to the back of the housing unit. He walks up to the TV, and this is when everybody held their breath. And he starts changing the channel. I'm now like, where's the popcorn?
Channel.
This is about to get good. He takes the chair. Each of us had one chair, and he sits down in it, and he kind of just plops back. And I'm watching all the gang guys to see what they're going to do. They're all looking at each other. Nobody moves. Nobody said a word. You know what he put on the channel that day? Animal Planet. And for the next 2 hours, everybody on that housing unit was a fan of Animal Planet.
That's right.
He got done, he turned it back to the channel, and then they called out mess hall. We got close in the next several days, and I made a point to ask him. I said, hey, John, when you got moved on, why did you go change the TV channel? And he literally looked at me. We didn't know anything about each other. He said, whoever runs the TV runs the housing unit, right, Matt? I said, yeah. He said, who ran the TV that day? And it was in that moment that I recognized John's MO was to be an imposing force. His reputation preceded him. Guards were talking about, that's little John. Inmates, black, white, brown, young, old, we're all talking about John's reputation. And we talk about it now, and there's a tension between how much you share. We don't want to glory in it. He never wants to glory in his past, as he's called his youthful indiscretions. But it's remarkable to see where you were coming into that place and how God's providence would place you on the bed next to mine, and we would develop this relationship. So take us from there, because I did. Right. I wanted to start a Bible study.
Yes.
I wanted to share the word with as many people as possible. And then I invite you from time to time, hey, John, come to the Bible study. What are you thinking?
Yep. So, no, sometimes I'd be sitting on my bed or waiting for, Matt to finish, but I would always be listening. And because of some of the stories or anecdotes that he was telling, it piqued my interest. I would love those little stories and then how they ended with, just how we put it all together. And it wasn't like somebody pushing God on top of you. Because although I did come from a family, we were Catholic and we were basically holiday Catholics, went to church on the holidays and such. But I always had like a reverence or a respect for God, even though I didn't have any, at the time, I felt like I had no need for him in my life. But I always had that reverence or respect. Like, it's one thing I noticed, and I was telling Matt, I said, I never liked when anybody uses the Lord's name in vain. Even when I wasn't a Christian or practicing anything, I just always found that to be totally rude and just not a good thing, But then moving forward, Matt starts running the Bible study, and 2 or 3 guys would show up, and he would sit and go through his little spiel. And then I would show up and, be like, hey, that's interesting, sit in on it. And then one day, Matt, we have legal mail. So when you get legal mail, it's different from getting regular mail. Regular mail, the officer comes up, starts calling out names, you go up to the gate, you get your mail. Legal mail, you have to go downstairs to a legal mail office, sign for your legal mail, they open it in front of you, take it out, and that's how you get your legal mail. So on this particular day, Matt was like, do me a favor. I know you're not into whatever, but just here, take this daily bread and read today's daily bread, and I'll be right back. All right, man, I got this, no problem. So Matt leaves the unit, and then one of the officers had brought him his legal mail. So they're like, Matt, don't worry about going downstairs, I got you. So he came right back in. When he came right back in, I made the move to go, he's like, no, go ahead, you got it. I'm like, all right, no worries.
You said, I can read.
I know how to read.
But before we got to that moment, you had entertained the invitation to go to the church services.
Yes.
And I was just excited.
Real quick, your mom was right, bro. I would forget something in between. All right, you got me, boss.
So he's coming to church. We're going out on Sunday nights, and there's outside ministers, like prison ministries, coming in. And some are better than others.
Right, just like this.
And the night that you came, what did you see?
Right, so Matt used to invite me, come to church. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I want to go to the gym. I want to work out, something different. This night, for some reason, I said, I'll come with you. So we go to church. We get to church, and there's this little old guy up there. He had to be like 70 years old. He had like the Black Panther tattoo, and you could tell he was like an old sailor type guy, And he's up there talking about God, how he got saved, how he used to pal around and drink and fight and everything, and he changed his life. And I was like, look at this guy, man. He was so vibrant, like moving around the stage. He just was like filled with the Lord. Now I know what was going on now, but then I didn't know. I'm like, this guy must have been hitting the bottle before he came in here. So sure enough, I'm like enamored with this guy. Like I just love this guy. I'm like, look at this guy, man. So we go back upstairs, and I had brought a kid with me, this kid, Vinny, who used to pal around with me. I'm like, Vinny, take a walk. So we go to church, because also church used to be a good meeting place from other units, so you don't get to see everybody all the time, but when they call church out, everybody gets to go to church. So you can see guys you don't get to see all the time. So I'm like, Vin, take a walk. He takes a walk. Church is over. We come back upstairs. Matt lays down to go to sleep. Me and Vinny are sitting at the table. He's smoking a cigarette. There's a peanut butter lid for an ashtray. And we're talking. And he's like, hey, John, you believe this crap? What he's using profanity. So you believe this crap?
He's talking about the Bible study every day.
Everything that we saw, just downstairs. I said, listen, bro, what do I know? I said, it would be easier for me to believe maybe if God moved this ashtray across the table. I said, but then you know what I would do? I would blame it on the big fan. The fan must have blew it. So I would make an excuse to not have that belief. So we go to sleep and lay down. And what happens is the next day, while we're reading this Bible study, and Matt asked me to read the Daily Bread, you guys are all caught up, right? I'm just making sure we're not missing nothing, because, the boss is staring right at me. I can feel her eyes shooting right through me. So I start to read, first of all, 3 or 4 people were coming the whole time he's doing it. Now there's 38 people on the unit. This day, like 25 people show up.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's weird, man. What are all these people doing here, you know? So I start to read the daily bread. I'm like, hey guys, welcome. I start to read it. As I'm reading the words, I start to feel this emotional tornado inside of me. And I'm like having this conversation in my head. Yo, you better not cry in front of these guys. So I'm like, I get up, I go, guys, excuse me for a minute, I gotta go to the bathroom. I get up, I walk to the bathroom.
So you're out of sight now.
Right.
And the 30-some guys at the Bible study are all looking at me like, what the heck just happened? And I'm like, nobody move, nobody say a word.
So I go in the bathroom, I start splashing water on my face. I'm in the mirror throwing punches. I'm like, yo, come on, man, what are you doing? What are you doing? Crying in front of these lames, bro? Cut it out. So I shake it off. I go back out. I'm like, sorry about that, guys. It must have been the hot dogs at lunch. I sit down. I open the daily bread. I say like one word, and that's it. A flood of emotion comes over me, and I start crying like a little baby.
Like a little baby.
My chin is wobbling. Who said, I need a hug later? All right. So I start crying. But
you were weeping.
I'm not sad. Like, I was crying, and I'm crying bad.
It's like you let it out.
Yeah, it felt like that, like almost like a pressure valve being released.
Right.
And as I'm crying, I'm saying these things. I remember this where I'm saying, I just want what that old guy has from last night. I want to have that type of peace in my life, that type of feeling that he has. I don't know what it is, but I want to feel like I could fall backwards and that God is going to catch me. So as soon as I said that, I like stopped crying. And I'm like this. I look around, everybody's like, and so I look at Matt and I'm like, yo, that's crazy, right? So he goes, yeah, he goes, that's crazy. He goes, that's the Holy Spirit, John. The Holy Spirit just came upon you. I said, I don't know what came upon me, but I know this. All I kept saying was, that was crazy, right?
Yeah.
All day, every time I walk past him, I'm like, yo, that was crazy, right? Because I still can't believe, like, what happened.
You kept saying 3 things.
I felt clean from inside.
That was crazy.
Yes.
I feel clean.
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
Yep.
And as he kept saying those same 3 things, I kept answering the same way.
He's like, leave me alone. No.
But you knew, you had a sense that the Lord was knocking on your heart.
Yep.
I think you had listened long enough to the Bible study. The Lord was doing a work in John's heart along the way, and he didn't know it. I think that's the point. John was just receptive and open. And in that moment, when he cleansed you from the inside out, you felt lighter. You literally articulated that you wanted to commit your life to the Lord.
Yep. I really felt like God touched my heart that day. And that's how, once I was walking past Matt, all day long, I'm just like, yo, that was crazy, right?
So
anybody I saw, they were like, anybody else I said, they're like this, we didn't see anything. We didn't see nothing. I'm like, don't worry about it, I'm good. They're like, no, we don't know.
Yeah, but I knew there was something happening because it was like his first moment of confession. He pulled me aside and said, I want to tell you what happened last night. Now mind you, we're making our way through the day, and he proceeds to tell me that when I went to bed the previous night, he sat out at the table out front of my bunk, and him and Vinny had this conversation where he was challenging God that if he was real, then he should move this ashtray. And he kept telling me more about his challenge to God, almost wanting me to affirm how ridiculous that was. Because God doesn't work that way, right, Matt?
Nope.
And I would be like, no, he doesn't work that way, John. We make our way through the day.
Right, that would be like a magic trick, you know what I mean? God doesn't do, he does magic, don't get me wrong, but not magic like that. So anyway, I go lay down. Matt's laying down, he's going to sleep.
Lights out.
Lights are out. Everybody, the tears pretty quiet. I'm laying there, And all of a sudden, I sit up like the Undertaker on the wrestling. I'm like, yo.
Yeah.
Because he's that close that I could just reach over and touch him because our beds are only like this far apart from each other, all the way down the unit. I'm like, yo. He's like, what's up? I'm like, yo, bro, that was God moving my ashtray. Right?
Listen,
Right.
when he said that, it was as if the Lord himself gave such clarity and revelation, because John didn't know the Bible inside and out. He didn't know chapter and verse as much as I did. Instantly, when he said that and he pointed at his heart, Jeremiah 17 came to mind. The heart is desperate, it's wicked, it's an ashtray. And when John made the connection, God's not going to move something outside of me, one thing that would be undeniable, that I could not question or explain away, is how God would move something inside of me, that ashtray. And I was so proud of him because those dots are rarely connected. And that began this journey where I watched somebody become childlike,
Yep.
interested in, is that really what it says? And I would watch him read it on his own, the Word of God, something he had never picked up for himself. I had watched him find interest in what the Word of God said for his life. He wanted to come to the Bible study and participate. He soon led the Bible study. And I watched him grow in his faith so much. John was very protective of our relationship, as you can imagine, as God, I believe, placed him in the bunk next to mine and safeguarded me.
Under my wing.
I was always available for a lot of inmates. I wanted to make myself available, and probably to a fault, there's something called a prison headlock, where people will bend your ear to no end. And I'm still trying to figure out if a prison headlock is worse than a church headlock. I didn't know how to say no, right? And then one day, a couple days went by, and like nobody was coming to frequent my area, like a Dr. Phil, like coming to drop off all their problems. And I'm like, why is nobody coming in my area? Come to find out, John put out the word like, yo, stop coming and messing with Matt. I had to go to John, like, John, no, listen to me. That's the opposite. I want to be available for people. I want to show them the love of the Lord. So I had to like tell him that certain things, being the Lord's servant, are hard, but necessary.
So I would charge them soups on the side. You want to see Matt? Give me 2 soups. No, I didn't do that.
So, tell them about you knowing and learning about baptism.
Yeah, so after, being involved with going to church and praying, and then, Matt teaching me a lot of things. He was more like my Bible than my Bible was my Bible to me. You know what I mean? When you're with somebody who's just the example of what you could be, you want to aspire to be that, right? I think so anyway. But at one point, I was reading about baptism, and I started getting curious, and I was like, you know what? I need to be baptized, even though I was when I was a child, naturally. So I started talking to Matt. I'm like, I want to be baptized. Can you do it? Can you baptize me? Because they had a baptism at the church once in a while, and I was like, no, I want you to do it. So he's like, I don't know, bro. We're gonna have to call the boss. So we had to call up Andrea, get some information, and then, once we found out that as long as your heart is pure and you are doing it for the right reasons, then yes, you can do it. So Matt scooped some water out of the toilet bowl. That's not true. We had a sink. Don't panic. So he took the water and we did the baptism. I'll never forget, it was on a Super Bowl Sunday too.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
While most of the housing unit was in the back watching the Super Bowl, me, you, and a couple witnesses were in the bathroom having this moment of a lifetime.
Yep.
Baptizing him in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yep. So I got baptized there at the prison. And then
You were excited about telling people
Yeah.
what the Lord had done. Now get this. Everyone knew Little John from his past resume that preceded him. They weren't intimate. They weren't aware of this transformation other than seeing him in the big yard, in the cafeteria. But John was so excited about wanting to tell people what God had done.
I'm like, come here, let me tell you something.
What would you do?
I would start grabbing guys and cornering them. I'd be like, look, I got to tell you a story. They'd be like, no, wait, I got to, no, come here, you want to hear this. And then I would tell them the story about what happened and how God touched my heart and moved my ashtray.
I thought it was cool because you were unashamed, and I loved watching that nobody was going to say no to you. I think that was the point, is that nobody was going to tell you no, and you took the captive audience,
literally,
literally, and told them how God had moved your ashtray.
Yes, without a doubt.
And it was so impactful. That Bible study began to grow, as you can imagine, when people saw that if this guy could change from the inside out. I was in the big yard one day, 120 guys, birds of a feather flock together. You got different people segregated doing different things, the weight pit, the bocce ball, the handball, the soccer, the basketball. And the warden himself, who, by the way, was a petty officer when John started his prison bids.
Yeah, Kennedy.
And by the time John came to Midstate, this officer had advanced in his career, so much so that he's now the warden of this institution. So he knew John at every step, and John knew him along the way. The warden came out into the cage. The warden never traveled alone. He always had an entourage. He had a lieutenant with him, a sergeant with him, and other officers. So when he entered the room, everybody knew it. When he walks out, every inmate stops and sees, what's the warden doing out here? And this is what he does. True story. Yo, Maddie. I'm like, yeah, Maddie. Calls me Maddie. Come here. Now I'm like, oh no. Last thing you want is the warden publicizing that he's about to have an intimate conversation with you. The culture in prison, as you can imagine, is a beast. People take that type of stuff and run with it. So I walk up to the gate. I stand at ease. I got my hands behind my back. I'm like, yes, sir. I'm hoping that he talks loud enough for people to hear, that there's not this intimate meeting, and he does. Because I just want to let you know how thankful I am for the work that you're doing with Little John. Now stop. Because in my former life, I was a professional soccer player, and it wasn't uncommon to get done a training session with a group of kids and have a mom and a dad pull me aside and say, hey, Coach Matt, we just want to thank you for the work that you're doing with little Johnny here. So now I'm in the prison yard, and the warden himself is saying, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing with Little John. And then he proceeded to say this, and he used a lot of foul language. If these bleepity bleeps, and he pointed to his peers, and those bleepity bleeps out there, if they knew who that guy was, they wouldn't look him in the eyes. And it struck me like a ton of bricks that day. The warden had no idea, except for the fact that what he saw in this man right here, he basically was saying to me, hey, I know that guy, and his present looks nothing like what I know of his past. And it dawned on me in that moment, on that day, the power of the gospel to redeem anyone from anywhere who's done anything.
Now, don't get me wrong, being a Christian is great, but I don't get the free sandwiches no more. It's all right. But after that, what happened was, one day we're sitting in the unit, and we have what's called SOG, Special Operational Gang, whatever they are. It's these special cops that come from other prisons into your prison, and they do a shakedown. So the normal officers usually come by, they'll look in your locker, they'll move a few things around. During the course of the day, they'll pick two or
If
three
they knew you and
lockers.
respected you, they wouldn't
Right.
really mess with you.
So, but these cops, when they come through,
Yeah.
they throw everything on the floor, they look through everything, and they had found a razor I had. It wasn't for protection. I had Matt, the ice pick. I used to do little arts and crafts. So I would cut pictures out of magazines and make little collages of things that I wanted in the future. I would, do little stuff like that.
Single blade from a
From a
shaver.
razor. So they found it. So they don't say anything at first. They send us back in the unit. We all start putting our stuff back together. I noticed that the pen with the razor is gone. I'm like, man. But nobody's saying anything. So I'm like, all right. Maybe they just tossed it on the ground and it got lost in the mix or something.
Right.
So I don't know, about maybe 4 o'clock in the morning, because they don't want to come get me during the regular hours, 'cause in case there's an incident, they figure I'm going to act up and start.
No, they typically would take the person on the spot with their charge out of the unit, and everybody would know they had contraband, just
Yeah.
like that. They didn't do that. Whether you thought you skated,
Right.
I think we even talked about it like, wow, you're still here.
Right.
When they came to get this guy, it was in the middle of the night. I remember waking up and hearing the keys on the guards and the gate, and they called you by name. John Paladino, come to the gate.
Like, there's no John here.
And they asked him to turn around, put your hands behind your back, and he had to put his giant paws of hands through this slot where they cuffed him. And they did that because they didn't want an incident on the unit, because they still feared that if they came when he was aware that he was going to fight back. And they took him to
I went
AdSeg.
into Yardsville, to the hole. And know what I did when I was there? That was part of it, yes. I stood quiet. Because when you're in the hole, there's only cells on one wall. So there's nobody, you can't see anybody in front of you, so there's really no one to speak to. You're speaking to somebody next to you that you can't see. So I just stood quiet and I started hearing stories. I started hearing stories about this guy who was in prison, who was a monster. They were telling stories like, I saw this guy bite the head of a rat off. I seen him kill 3 men in the yard with a pencil. Like, it was crazy stories. And then they mentioned me. And I said, I'm John, I'm here, I'm little John. And only half of those stories are true. It wasn't a rat, it was a mouse. But I stood there for about 7 days.
Right.
And while I was there, I was telling everybody my story.
That's right.
About what happened. And I'm like, yo, it's so crazy that I got sent here, because I feel like I got sent here because a lot of those young guys were 18 years old doing life sentences because, they had shot killed somebody or did something that they regretted it. They were like, I did a drive-by shooting and killed an innocent person. It wasn't my intention. If I could take it back, I would do it 1,000,000 times over. And then I was able to start telling them my story, and that there's hope, and that having trust and belief in God will really ease everything in your life, and miracles do happen. So after the 7 days, they send me back. And when they sent me back to the prison, it's very unusual you're going to wind up back in the same bed, especially for that amount of days that the bed would be left open.
Impossible.
It really is an impossibility. But my bed was still open. They were like, Paladino, go back up to 7. You're back in your bed. I was like, what, really? Back next to my buddy? I go back upstairs, and I start telling the story about when I was over there, and we just started going through it, and how God's grace has been on both of our lives, especially in that instance where we were there. There were so many confirmations. And
You understood that when you were sent for those 7 days in administration, segregation, the hole, as you guys might know it, and you understood because you were reading the word that Paul himself was also in jail. And you said to me so many times, you think God sent me there to reach those young kids? And I was like, John, without a shadow of a doubt, because he was so willing to share what God has done, and who knows what seeds you planted along the way.
Right.
We spent 3 years, I think, together. The
Yep.
Lord did amazing works that we witnessed, and you went to parole one day, and you
Yeah.
were waiting on the next transition from your state time to you had Fed time
had
you were
federal
doing,
time, yeah.
right? He was still living out his consequences from his past. And he came back from the state parole board, and they hit you with the largest hit that we had heard.
Right.
More time added. You came back at peace. You were like, God's will be done.
Yep.
You weren't trying to fight it, but that eventually led you to get transferred out,
Yes.
where you went and did your Fed time.
Funny story. Listen to this. I go to the parole board. I go to see them. They're like, look, once again, there's my jacket, Andrea. So my jacket is like all my charges, everything I've done. That's called your jacket. I told Andrea that. She goes, what were you wearing? So I see the parole board. They're like, look, I had what's called a 7 flat. So when you do a flat number, you do a third of your number, then you're eligible for parole.
John, this is Landmark Church. They are well aware of jail lingo.
Right, okay. So, you're working the front number, but you're also working good time from the back. So I had like 2 years in, I go see them, and they're like, look, your jacket, it doesn't seem like you have learned your lesson, you've been in and out of prison, blah, blah, blah. They're like, we're gonna hit you. So they hit me with the rest of my time.
Yeah.
It was like 34 months, something like that. So they give me the hit, and I'm like, all right, I go back to the unit like Matt said, and I'm like, they gave me a hit, man. Guess I'll be here for a while longer, finish my time, but I did have peace with it. But my only issue was I still had to go to the feds to go do 2 years. So, you're gonna love this story. I get my lawyer on the phone. I'm like, look, I want you to take me to court. I want to go see the judge, and I want to see if the judge will run my sentence concurrent with the federal time so they can put it together, and then I'll just go do my 2 years in the feds. So the lawyer gets it all set up, and they take me to court. So the day I go to court, it's like the weirdest thing, man. Nobody's there. It's me, my lawyer, the prosecutor, the judge, and a guard. So I'm looking around, I'm like, this is like crazy, because usually the court is bustling with people. There's hundreds of people walking the hallways, nobody's there. So I hear high heels coming, boom, boom, boom. Here's my lawyer. I'm like, Amy, what's up? What's going on? So what, are we canceled? She's like, no. She goes, we're getting ready to go in 5 minutes. We go to see the judge. The judge tells me just like this, Mr. Paladino, I'm not even supposed to be here today. I'm supposed to be on vacation. I'm leaving this afternoon. He goes, but I came here today to do your case only. You're the only case I'm hearing today. So naturally, I'm like, thank you, Your Honor, I appreciate that. To summarize, I start telling him, look, I have this time in the state, I have this time in the feds. I'm asking you to run it concurrent so that I can just go to the feds, do my time, and get out and start life. He starts giving me all accolades. Oh man, you should have been a lawyer, you're very well spoken, you have a great argument. And then he looks at the prosecutor and he goes, her name was Portia Downing, I'll never forget her. He goes, Miss Downing, let me ask you a question. Do you have any problem with the time that Mr. Paladino served already? She's like, no, Your Honor. He goes, all right. He goes, Mr. Paladino, he goes, I'm vacating your sentence. So he didn't even run it concurrent. He
Just removed it.
canceled my sentence right then and there. He's like, time served. He goes, you were released from this moment forward from the state of New Jersey. He goes, but don't forget, the feds are gonna come get you. So I'm like, whatever, man, excellent, you know what I mean? Good. Go back to the unit. I tell Matt and them all what happened. This is like stuff that is very, very rare and hardly ever heard of. The judge could have just easily ran it concurrent. What difference did it make to him?
The judge he wants his time back.
Right. So I get the hit, the feds come get me.
Yeah.
They take me, I go to a few spots first before you get to the prison you're going to, but I wind up in Raybrook, up in New York State, all the way up by Lake Placid. Now, mind you, I had come from one of the worst federal prisons that they have. It's called Hazleton up in West Virginia. So I was used to being in the penitentiary where like, it's just bad. It's always stabbings and people getting killed and you're always on lockdown. So I was like, I hope they don't send me back there. I only got 2 years left. I'm trying to be, just a quiet guy, do my time and go home. So they sent me to Raybrook. When I get to Raybrook, I'm excited because there's weights, like real official weight pile. There's food, like the feds feed you a lot better than the state. So I'm like, I'm gonna get my weight up. I'm gonna be even bigger when I go home. And I'm there for about a month. Now, as soon as I get there, now mind you, I'm a Christian now. I start buying Bibles for people. I started talking to everybody on the unit about, what was going on with me in my life and how Christ had touched me and how I'm a Christian and I, want to live this really great life. And I was with all the wise guys, because in the feds, it's very cliquish. Yeah. So you're with your group. So it's unfortunate, but it is the way it is. So I'm with the Italians. So one day, let me tell you, the first day I get there, they know you're coming. They had a big bowl of pasta waiting for me. So I show up, I'm happy, I got all my stuff, I'm eating. So I'm there for like a month. I finally get to go to the store, I buy my radio, I got sweatsuits and my food. I'm setting myself up for comfort for the next 2 years. So we come back from mess one night, and I'm only there for maybe a month and a half. And the guard calls me. He says, Paladino, the lieutenant wants to see you down by his office. I said, okay, no problem. So in the feds, the protocol for the inmates is this. I'm taking somebody with me. So I go see my cellie, and I'm like, yo, the lieutenant just called me, come with me. Because once again, you don't want nobody thinking that you're being a rat, you're telling on nobody, you don't need no problems. So you bring a witness. The cop says, no, you can't bring nobody with you. You got to go by yourself. So I said, well, I'm not going then. So I go back to the group of guys and I said, listen, man, they're trying to make me go down there by myself, but we all know what's up. And they're like, listen, go ahead. We know you're good, go ahead. I go. Now the compound's shut down. So I'm walking across the compound by myself. I get to the lieutenant's office. I'm standing outside the door. I look in, he's on his phone, so I just stand there. Sure enough, don't you know, they let the kitchen workers out, and all these guys got to walk past me, seeing me standing in front of the lieutenant's office. So I'm like, this is not a good look at all. So he calls me in, he's like, Paladino, come in. I go in, I'm like, yes, sir, what can I do for you? He goes, you're out of here tomorrow. I go, what? I start arguing with him to stay. I'm like, listen, hold on, I just got here. I says, I haven't even been able to do the things I want to do. What are you talking about out of here tomorrow? What is it? Because I booked somebody up before, beat somebody in another prison. What is going on? He goes, listen, man, all I know is you're out of here tomorrow. That's all he keeps saying is, you're out of here tomorrow. I says, listen, I just saw the counselors. They gave me my paperwork. I got 22 months left. I'm not going nowhere. And he's telling me, he goes, no, listen to me. You don't understand. You're going home. I said, what? I said, bro, listen to me. I said, I don't know how long you've been at this job, but you don't know what you're talking about. Trust me, nobody just goes home. So he says to me, he goes, listen, I don't care what you tell me. I got a phone call from Grand Prairie, Texas, the headquarters, to release you tomorrow. So you're being released. I'm like, all right. I go back to the unit. I tell everybody what just happened, and everybody's the same way, like this. What? What are you talking about? Impossible. I said the same thing. Next morning comes, I get up, I'm ready to go, because you always get up early. When the guard opens the door, you better be up. You don't want nobody to make a mistake and come in and stab you in your cell. So you're up and ready to go. I can hear the keys going, clink, clink. He's coming down the hallway, clink, clink, clink. He gets to my cell. He's like, yo, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to the gym. He says, Paladino, man, they're waiting for you out front. Pack your stuff. You're out of here. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? He goes, I don't know, bro. He goes, but you got to go right now. Come on, they're waiting for you. I look at my cellie. I'm like, everything's yours. Boom. I'll put on a pair of sweatpants and a shirt, a T-shirt. And I walk to the front, and sure enough, they're like, come on. They process me right out. And at this time, it's funny. This is when all the guards weren't getting paid. So they're all mad. So when you leave the feds, they have to give you a $20 bill and they have to give you a bus ticket. And then they give you a debit card for whatever you had in your account. So I had some money in my account. They hand me the 20, but they're complaining. So I slide it back. Here you go, lunch on me today. They put me in a car and take me to Saranac Lake, to a bus stop. Go ahead, get out. I'm just like, what? Bus ticket in my hand, a little bag with some paperwork, sweatpants and a t-shirt. It's like October, it's cold. So I go, now I don't know what to do, but I walk into a store. You hear the little bell ring, ding-ling-ling-ling. I walk in, the lady turns around, she's like, ooh. What can I do for you? I said, I need a jacket. I need something. She goes, we don't have that size in here. I said, well, you know somewhere I can go? She's like, try down the block. And I was a little upset because when I left, I think I heard the door lock. But I don't know, I'm not sure. But anyway, I go down the street, I get a jacket. The bus comes, they put me on a bus. And I don't know, 8 hours later, I'm in the middle of Manhattan on 42nd Street and 8th Avenue. Free as a bird, like anything's possible. It's about 9 o'clock at night. I jump on a bus and I take now mind you, I'm in touch with Andrea because we could email and I used to call. But when they release you, they shut everything off. So the night before they shut all my stuff off, I couldn't even tell anybody that I was coming home. Couldn't even email anybody like, look, I don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna be there tomorrow. None of it. But then I made a decision on my way home. I'm like, I'm not gonna even stop to get a phone or nothing. I'm just gonna show up. So I get on another bus from Manhattan. I go to Clifton, New Jersey, to my father's house. I ring the doorbell, bing bong. And I hear my dad coming down the stairs. And my dad was a rough, guy. He's like, who is it? I'm like, it's me. He opens the door, he's like, what, did you break out? I said, no, they released me. He goes, what? I thought you had 2 more years to do. I said, I do. He goes, well, come on in, let's go. We get inside, start making phone calls. But the funniest part of that whole story is, till this day, today, I never heard anything from anybody why they released me. Nobody ever contacted me. I contacted my lawyer and was like, what should I do? He's like, sit tight. If they arrest you again, we got a big lawsuit. He goes, but other than that, you're home, like, do you. I've never, ever, to this day, where we sit here right now, have heard, like, why that happened, how it happened.
Allegedly. This allegedly happened.
Allegedly happened. But here I am.
So, there's so much to tell, but as we...
Too many stories.
Yeah, as we land the plane, what would you say to this group? There's people sitting in the foyer, there's people watching online, there's people, God bless you guys that are sitting out there in the foyer.
Yep.
Say hello, say hello. Look, everyone turn around and look at this. This is simply remarkable. What would you say? What do they need to know? What's the takeaway here?
All right, so here's the deal, guys. I'm having the doors locked right now. And nobody's leaving here without being saved tonight. How about that? No, but seriously, on a real serious note, I was telling Matt earlier today that, I do some trainings and I teach people like all the industry recognized credentials you need to be on construction sites. But one of the things that I always tell guys is this. I'm like, this is rhetorical. So what were you doing for the last 5 years? What is it that you've done for the past 5 years, and has it fulfilled you? Has it made you happy? Have you had a good feeling in your heart? Do you have peace and just like a euphoric feeling? And then I challenge people, I say, well, do me a favor. Why don't you take the next 5 years and try it my way and see if what I'm saying isn't true? So if you accept Christ into your life as your personal Savior, I'm not saying that overnight things become better and you hit the lottery tomorrow. But what I am saying is this: he will provide peace for your heart. Yes. He will provide happiness, even in the moments when you don't feel happy. He provides you with that shoulder to lean on and cry on when you have to. And as a result, it makes us be better people. You know, like I walk around, I tell Matt, I have these cards, that's the wrong card. But I have these cards, and it has the fruits of the Spirit. And I hand the cards out to everybody, and you guys, I brought enough to give. I don't know if I brought enough for this amount. But maybe we have to share a couple. We rip them in half, and you get 4 fruits. and you get 5 fruits. Right? But you're going to wind up with some fruit tonight. And what's going to happen is, I just let everybody know, look, try to be as good as you can be at one of those things today than you were yesterday. And if we continue on in that path, because I believe that those things are Christ's character, and that love is the umbrella of them all: love, peace, joy, kindness, self-control, faithfulness. And I just believe that if we can emulate that to the best of our ability, that we're emulating Christ's character. And when we do that, that becomes infectious to the people around us. Somebody sees you acting the right way, or maybe you don't use profanity, or maybe you're just always happy, and then someday somebody's gonna say, yo, man, why are you like this?
That's right.
And then that gives you your opening to be like, I'm this way because God moved my ashtray.
That's right.
Right?
So, final thing, and then I'm going to dismiss you. I want you to spend some time in the back so some of you guys can meet him. John did write multiple books. Doesn't really care like I do about that, but God did a unique work. One of those books is called How God Moved My Ashtray. It's a very unique devotional. We have those. And your second book, which tells your entire testimony, Could I Have Saved Me from Crime to Christ? A very unique way to write it. But Romans 8:31.
My life verse. When I figured out that you should have a life verse, I was reading the Bible one day and I came across this verse. As soon as I read it, man, I knew. I was like, look at that. That's for me. And the verse is saying, if God is lifting you up, who could push you down?
Yeah, if God is for us, who can be
nobody,
against
right?
us? That's right.
You're being lifted by the Almighty himself.
Yes.
To be in whatever position he deems fit for you. So who could come against you and push you down?
That's right, that's right.
Nobody, man. So I used to write that on my finger. And I'd walk around and be like, yo, you know what that is, right?
You could have wrote more than one verse on a finger like that.
I could have probably put half the Bible right there. But no, listen, in closing, I appreciate you guys all coming. This is really a humbling experience for me, because one of the things that I was so worried about was that I don't want to seem like I'm glorifying anything to do with my past. I made some youthful indiscretions, and in those moments there were things that I wanted to do. But I realized the error of my thought process and my ways now, because I've been saved and I have that knowledge. So remember, knowledge without application is useless. So we need to have the knowledge that we have, but then apply it. Yeah. And if you apply it to your lives, it works, man. I'm telling you. And I know that, you know, Matt's gonna do like a calling for everybody, but I'm challenging anybody in this room right now that you've heard my story. You haven't heard the whole story. I'm giving you the summary, but just know this: really bad guy, really good guy. And now the mission in life isn't to do harm anymore. It's to do good, to help, to prosper people, to let people know that there's another way to live life, a better, healthier way. And there's a way that we can do it if we involve God in our lives.
Amen.
So, you know, Matt's gonna say what he's gonna say, but I'm challenging anybody in this room right now that if you do not have Christ in your life, yo, give me 5 years. And then if you don't like it, go back to what you were doing. But give me a chance. And that's God talking, not John. Give God 5 years. Come on, get in here, do what you gotta do, accept Christ as your Savior, and live what I'm telling you is gonna happen. Yeah. You'll see it on your life. And once again, listen, none of us are perfect. I don't always get it right. I told Matt earlier today, some days, man, I fail. I have road rage. I'm, constantly like, But in those moments, what I do is I take a few seconds to just be like, God, please, give me some peace right now. Let me act right. Let me act correctly. And it works. It really does. And my life is different because of it. And I'm living like a really good, prosperous life, not only monetarily, physically, mentally, in my heart. My family's good. The people I love are all good. And I would hope that that's the same for all of you, that you guys all share love with one another, have Christ in your life, and try your very best to live by those 9 fruits, to be more patient with people, to love more, to have some self-control, and I guess that's about it.
So Mark's going to escort you. You can.
Where am I going?
Mark, you can go this way. Mark will help you get down. I want to give people time. We're going to do one more thing here. John, thank you, my brother. We appreciate you.
All right.
And